Okay, we are continuing working on our profile view controller. Yesterday, we were able to populate our My Items table view. So if we go back to our application, we were able to go to profile view and we redesigned our UI. We included a segmented control and we moved up our update profile button and our sign out button. And we also included this table view here. So currently we have two segments. We have a favorite and we have a My Items, which just shows the current users' items that they created on the marketplace here. So here we have our marketplace, there's items, and the user only has 2 of those items currently in the list. And we were able to query only for the user objects. We'll continue working on favorites. We'll continue working on favorites such that we're able to populate favorites. Along the way, we'll also, if time permits, we will go to our cell. We'll go to our cell here. We'll go to our cell here, our seller name, for example, and we'll change that to be a tappable label so that such, if I tap on it, I could segue to a seller item controller, shows the user's photo and that particular user's items. Because currently in our UI, there's no way to see all the users' items, only items, right? So that's basically the objective of the day, and then we'll wrap up our project with some refactoring a little bit. We might end up changing our database service class and our storage service class to singletons. If we do not do that in class, you could always do it offline or in your own CTA project. Because we're using database service instances everywhere through the app, there's no reason to not have it be a singleton, okay? I want to make sure that we know that there. And also we want to maybe write an extension on date so that we have date formatter everywhere we want the date to be done. So if we have time, we'll do those 2 refactors there. One refactor is a singleton, and the next one is have a date extension, so that everywhere we have a date, we could simply just say date value dot date string, for example, okay? But as far as like UI is concerned, it would be great if we were able to tap on a seller name and see a seller items controller with only that seller's information, and also just continue and populate our profile view to show the favorites there. And I think that's good. That's a good place to be. And icebox items, which we're not gonna get to, I might just throw it in there, not really needed for anything, but it would be nice to have a collection view here of items. I could scroll horizontally and see and change or filter our entire table view with the categories we have. Because remember, we have categories, correct? So those here would represent categories, but I don't think we'll get to that today, and that really is not MVP. That's more like if, you know, we had time there, but this is not MVP at all, right? Because whatever we do here, that technology, that API, we've done it already throughout. That's basically a query. Everybody with me? Cool? All right, and we've been doing queries since yesterday with the where clause to be able to filter something based on some sort of predicate. With that said, let's continue on. Let's now go over to our database service. We have a fetch user items. We'll write a fetch favorites items or fetch favorites. So public, again, I'm in the database service class. I'm below the fetch user items function. And we're writing a new function called fetch favorites. And again, the favorites is a collection. So we're not doing where here, for example, in that particular call. Because in that case, we're just accessing the user. So basically, we access the user's collection. Then we go on to the user ID or document. Then the user document has a collection, correct? Correct, everybody? So collection, document, collection, and that collection is called favorites. Favorites collection. So on that favorites collection, we'll just say get us all the documents. So if we go back to our Firebase console, and we navigate to our Firebase demo project, and we'll see where we headed. So if we go to database here, our aim is to go to the users collection, go to the users collection, go to that particular user ID, go to the collections of favorites, and just get all the favorites, right? In that case, that user, well, we only have one favorite right now, but we could populate more favorites there. But basically, go ahead and get all the documents from favorites, okay? So this is where we headed. So users collection, user ID, and favorites collection. And we get in the current users favorites. So here we will get a user object, the current user who's logged in. So this is the current user who's logged in. We'll use our DB instance here. We'll say collection. The collection we're after is database service dot users collection. In the users collection, I need access to the document with the user ID. And on that user ID, I'm accessing a sub-collection. And that sub-collection is the favorites sub-collection. On that favorite sub-collection, we'll say get documents with completion. And here I'm really showing us both ways we could do fetching. We saw in our items collection, our items feed collection, we did fetching via the add snapshot listener. And yesterday we did get documents, and today we'll continue with get documents because both are going to the same table view. And we'll be using the refresh control to refresh it. So two ways to fetch. One is automatic refresh, meaning add listener, and the second is manually fetching by get documents. Everybody with me? Right? And then we documented it here yesterday. We put some notes here, add snapshot listener, it continues to listen for modifications to a collection, and get documents, fetches documents only once, right? And then I have to keep fetching again manually. Okay, so we have our collection, users collection, the user document, the collection of favorites, get us all those documents. And in here, we'll say if let error equal to error. And here we'll say else everything went well. Again, here we have if let error equal to error because we may have an error here. So we first check to see if we have an error. If we have an error, then we will, oh, we need a completion. Fetch favorites completion at escaping here. For now, we're not going to take an ID. Yes, we could take an ID and just fetch like a particular user's stuff, but for now, we'll just like keep it the way we have. So user, we have a result type here, and we'll just return a Boolean value. Well, not a Boolean value, an array of, oh, we haven't done favorites yet. So we need to do that. Yes, sir.
What's the difference between a favorite and an item?
Yes, that's a good question. I mean, for now, there's subtle differences. There is, in a favorite, there's a favorited date, okay, right? And we could have more favorite properties on it. But ideally, or we could have done one item as a favorite as well. Okay. So just like duplicating the same item, right? Because Firebase, you can just say, oh, send me the whole item up, right? You have to make it a dictionary type anyway. But yes, the subtle differences are the person who favorited it, in that case me, and also for now, the favorited date. Okay? Cool. So favorite, good question. So favorite is an array. We don't have a favorite type yet. And we'll say completion, error, failure, failure, failure. Oh, we have an error here, so that's not going to work. Let us take a detour, create our favorite. Let's create a favorite model, and we will continue on. We'll create a favorite model. Can we go create a new class now? A new struct, sorry? Can we navigate over it, create a new struct? Okay, so let's go create a model. On the models, I'm creating a new model. Favorite. And we'll say struct favorite. Our extension. On favorite. And what do we have? We have item name, which is a string. Let me double check our data. Data. We have favorited date, which is a timestamp, and we have to import Firebase here. We have an image URL. Item ID, item name. Oh, we have item name already, sorry. Price. Seller ID. And lastly, we have, that's all I think we have, unless we missed something else. Cool. Favorited by, yes. Do we have it in the database when we sent it up? I don't think we did, because the current user is the one who favorited it. So for now, we're only getting favorites from the current user, so we don't have that there. That becomes a little redundant for the use case that we're doing. So we're moving over to our initializer, init here. We have a dictionary object, string. I'll expose us to a fillable initializer here. So a fillable initializer, the way it works, all properties need to exist in order for the object to get created. Okay, what does that mean? All those properties here, we'll use a guard statement. All those properties here needs to have a value. If any of them are missing, that entire object is nil. My initializer doesn't get created for that particular object, okay? In our use cases so far, through our entire models, we've been using nil coalesce in here, for example. We've been using nil coalesce in here like this because we were going back and forth with our objects, right? And we wanted our dictionary objects to always get created. But if you're 100% sure that you are the one in charge of your database, right? You're 100% sure that you're the ones in charge of your database. There's no invalid data. Somebody does not accidentally not send up a price, for example, right? This is not gonna work. But if you're 100% sure that all the values will exist, you could go ahead and use a fillable initializer. Everybody with me? Right? Okay. So
You said that you can't upload an object without.
yes, like you're making sure that every point of your application is securing that the person does not upload missing data, then you're good, right? But in our examples, like now we'll have a project with both cases of initializers. One with a fillable initializer, already you've seen it, one with a fillable initializer with this question mark that makes it fillable. And for example, in our item, it's not a fillable initializer. If any of those objects are missing, that's okay, because we'll just simply put a default value. Everybody with me so far?
Is it safer to just make it not failable?
We need to know both ways.
But in general practice?
General practice is if you secure that all your properties are valid, just make it failable. That way the object doesn't get created with no display name, for example. Right? It's like when you're sending up data to Firebase, you don't want to send it with an empty message. Right? That way of making an object failable, it needs to have that display name in order for it to work. Right? But in the lab that we've been working on, it's a little frustrating because there's bad data and you're not gonna get any data back because it's nil. Cool? Very good. Yes, sir.
If you favorite something from another, let's say from another seller, and then that seller deletes his account, then what happens?
That would be up to you how you want to go ahead and delete stuff, right? Like, do you want his existing stuff to still show up, right? That's like more like a business rule kind of thing. Like, what do you want to delete from that user?
But it won't. It'll still show up on favorites if you do the failable.
On my favorite, yes. In the way we have our app currently. Yeah. But again, that's like how cascade you want to go. Like how deep you want to go with deletion. Like, should I just remove that favorite because that user doesn't exist anymore for that, right? Cool. It could be complicated too because you have to figure out like what is the best practice or what is not even best practice, but for your business perspective, what's best. Okay, so let's continue on here. So let's go ahead and do a guard statement. We start off with a guard statement here. And we'll first get our item name. Our item name is going to be from the dictionary here. Item name. Again, here we're comfortable with typing item name because I match my item name. Everything is matched here. So I know I'm not making mistakes here, but best practices, please use constants or wherever where you need it, okay? So here I'm going to say cast this as a string. And next I'm gonna say favorited date is dictionary object. And here, we say favorited date. And favorited date is a timestamp. Next. Image URL. Dictionary. Image URL. As image URL, what am I saying? Not as image URL, as string. Next, we have item ID, dictionary object, item ID as string. We have price, dictionary object. I'm sorry? Initializers are, well, as I said before codable, that's what we had to do every time we did JSON API stuff. Even more, right? When it's nested, and nested within that nested. But there were libraries for it. But now we have codable on our ends as far as APIs are concerned, but not Firebase, right? Next we have seller ID here as string. Cannot string to type string.
Your dictionary is not a dictionary.
Oh, I'm looking at it here. Thank you, sir. Well, we're not done. This is a dictionary of type any string. String any. Build. So here we're returning nil. If anything is filled, wait, else return nil. I have an else statement already. I'm telling you, when I blow up my computer, I cannot really visualize what's really happening. So I have an else statement here. Okay, so return nil here. Okay, cool. So here, if anything is missing, we need to return nil here, and then our object is not created. Okay? If any of those values are missing, the initializer returns nil. This is why it's marked as an optional, and it's known as a failable initializer. It could fail. Everybody with me so far? Okay? Now we have all the items we need. We need to go ahead and continue building out our object. So we'll say self.item name equal to item name, self.favorite date equal to favorite date, self.image URL equal to image URL, self.item ID equal to item ID, self.price equal to price, and lastly we have self.seller ID equal to seller ID. Build, make sure we have no errors here. Cool. Awesome. So we saw throughout our app, we have two initializers now. Feel free to use the initializers we've been using because you'll be going back and forth through your app. Everybody with me? Is that clear, everybody? Okay? All right, cool. But knowing that if your database is complete, you could always go to this failable initializer. That way you're making sure your objects are created correctly. All right? Awesome. Okay, so let's now go back to where we were creating. Let's go back to our database service. And we have a favorite now, that's great. So now go back, yes, sure. Go back to our favorite here. Any questions about this particular initializer we used here? Okay. This is an initializer. Either you have all the properties or you have a nil value returned to you. Right? Question? Good? All right, cool. So let's now move back to database service. Database service, we have a favorite now, so make sure in your result type, for your success type, it's a favorite array. For your failure, it's an error. And now we'll move over to completion here. So completion, failure is error, and in our success case, we have, well, we gotta create a snapshot, right? Moving too fast here. We have a snapshot which we need to use. So else if let snapshot equal to snapshot. And again, I've had some questions earlier. Here, we have a completion, right? That's a completion here. We define our function, it takes a completion. It's escaping because it's an asynchronous call. The function returns before the result of the function happens, right? Next, we have a result type here. We define a result type, right? The result type we use in our completion capture. Remember, closures capture values. So here we capture an error or we capture an array of favorites. And in our view controller, we have access to that via our trading closure syntax. Okay? So snapshot we have here. Let's go ahead and create our favorites array. So now we want to create our favorites array. We'll say snapshot.documents. And now, contrary to what we did yesterday or the day before with map, we cannot use map here because there's a possibility that one of our objects is nil. Everybody with me? Actually, let's do map first and then we'll see why. So if we do map here and then I use my favorite initializer and I say dictionary initializer, I say $0.data and I build. If I option click on favorites, what type is favorites? Shania, when we option click on favorites, what type is favorites?
Still typing it, but it should be a favorite.
Luba? It's optional, right? Because now we have a fillable initializer. This could be nil. It returns an optional object. To bypass that, what can we do here? What higher order function removes nil from an array? Compact map. So according to Cassandra here, we'll use compact map. So we'll say compact map here. And now if we option click on favorites, we have an array of favorites because now it removes all the nil values from our array. Okay? So it's very good. In our app, we have multiple things we could do, multiple reference points we have, right? We use map where we had objects that were not nil, no problem. And here we're using compact map where an object could be nil. So remove that nil object from my array, right? If you do not do that, you'd have to update your array here to be optional. And you don't want to start doing that there. Like you don't want to go there. Cool. So now we have favorites. We could say completion, and we could say success, and we say favorites. And now we have a favorites array. Awesome. And again, we could always update this to take like a user ID if you want to see a user's favorites, but I don't think we want to be able to have people see users' favorites. That's a bit too much there. I don't think we want to allow that. Is that fair? Do you want to see somebody else's likes? Maybe?
I don't think they do that for their apps.
Yeah, I don't think but if you do want to do that for your app, you could always update the function to take a user ID. Cool? Very similar to our fetch users here, which takes in a user ID. Cool?
Can you explain DIY compact?
Let's just write it out, what it does. So compact map removes nil values from an array. Example, if we have an array for nil 12 minus 9 nil, what compact map does, it goes through each value. Luba? It goes through each value in that array, removes the nil values, and it returns an array without the nil values in there. So now we have 4. What else we have, Luba?
Well, so map does not.
Map does not do that. If we have a fillable initializer, what type does it return? Our fillable initializer looks like this, right? It's this. What type does it return? It returns an optional favorite.
Oh, so if something is missing, it's not going to return. That's what
It's going to return nil.
yeah. If one of the
Yes, exactly. So, but being that it returns an optional favorite, the entire array becomes optional. Very good. Okay, cool. So we have fetch favorites. Awesome, awesome. Are we good here? Can we continue? If we have any other questions, please ask, because this is very similar to anything we've done so far for Firebase, right? The syntax is very similar. We have a function name, we have a completion that returns some sort of type, result type, right? The result type is either success or failure. Most times we have an error here. Well, not most times, we always have an error. So either success or error. Either we have an array of stuff, or we have a bool if we just don't care about what we're returning. Normally, we look for the user, the current user here. This is the syntax we've been using a lot everywhere. We have our database instance here, and we have the collection. It always starts out with collection first. I don't start out with document. So collection, document, so forth. I have a snapshot regardless of if I'm doing get documents or add snapshot listener. What Firebase gives us back is a snapshot. If we option click on snapshot here, oh, option click doesn't give me the definition. Let's jump to definition. You don't have to jump to definition here. This is a query snapshot. Yeah, let's do that one. So here we have a query snapshot. Regardless if we have, let's see if we get some information here. Query snapshot. That's not, okay. Regardless of, it would be nice if there was some documentation there, but regardless if it's get documents or add snapshot listener, it's still a query snapshot. A query snapshot represents the data in our Firebase store. Okay, everybody? Everybody?
Yes.
All right, cool. Are we okay here? Can we move over to our profile view controller? Yes? Yes? Okay, cool. We need feedback on that remote thing a lot, like the hands up or whatever, because when we hear, I don't get it, remotely, it's gonna be a challenge there. All right, so profile view controller, we could update some things here. In profile view controller, we could update this string to now be favorite. Build, so we updated our array of strings here we had yesterday to an array of favorite. That's still fine. We created the model. We could remove that to do item. All right. Going down, we have a fetch items. We could also have a fetch. We have a fetch items. Everybody has their fetch items. So now we could have a fetch favorites. So private function fetch favorites, very similar to what we have here, up here. For time, let's just take this. Yeah, let's just copy this for time and just put this in here. So what we have, I'm being a little too lazy. We gotta call it first. Database service dot fetch item, fetch favorites. Database service dot fetch favorites. With completion, we have a result. Actually, let's just type it out. Switch on result. We have a case failure, let error. And we have a case success, which is favorites. We'll update our closure. Again, this is closure syntax, trailing closure syntax, right? So we had one completion in our fetch favorites call, right? And here we're using closure syntax, trailing closure syntax. We have a result back. This is what we captured from our function call. So we have error, and here we'll break any strong retain cycles by saying weak self. So here we are breaking any strong retain cycles, so we don't want any memory leaks here. So that's why we're using weak self here, because we'll be using self in here. Cool. So here, if we have an error, we'll use dispatch queue.main. I saw sync yesterday. This will cause errors, please. It's async. You don't want to cause any race conditions. If you do sync, it's going to cause a race condition. Your app will crash. So here, dispatch main async here. And we'll just want to show an error. Show alert. What are we doing? Fetch favorites. So failed. Fetching favorites. Message is error.localized description. Again, localized description just gives you a more readable description of the error message. Next, we have our favorites. Great. So we'll just simply do self favorites equal to favorites. We'll just take care of what's going to happen. We'll just do both of them in one function. We're not going to do them individually per se. But with that said, it doesn't hurt to do this again. So just copy that and put it down here to stop the refresh control.
Alex, where did we have string instead of favorite?
We had string in the array. So if you go up where it says private var favorites, it was a string because we didn't have a favorite model yet. Cool? Good? Can we scroll up to Viewdidload? Can we scroll up to Viewdidload? Is that why I say like wave your hand if you're still typing on Zoom? It's gonna be a long day. When I had crickets in Zoom. We're all in it for the first time. Do you want a second monitor?
No, I think we could just share it.
You have the earbuds. So you're hearing the audio. And yeah. And whatever I'm doing now, I probably have to go at like 5 times slower. Whatever speed we're doing now will have to be decreased significantly.
No, I would say if we were to over together versus actually.
Or I could just record the YouTube videos and just slack it out. Because you guys could pause, rewind, watch it in your own time. Yeah, you cannot ask questions though. But we could have a debrief session about the video. Nah, it's fine. We'll do Zoom. It's going to be great. Okay, so let us continue. Can we go to Viewdidload? All right, so in Viewdidload, what do we have? We have a fetch items in Viewdidload. We'll basically write a method here called load data, which will just load both datas, fetch items and fetch favorites, and we'll change fetch items here to just load data. We added load data as opposed to fetch items, and then we did. And then I did give it to do refactor our Viewdidloads so they get shorter in scope there. Bless you, sir. Or just coughing? Okay. I don't know. You guys, that's not what I'm saying. For the world. What a world, what a world. Okay, let us actually just run the app and see what we have here. So run our app. Actually, before we run the app, let's do one other change. Where it does, on our refresh control, everybody, on the refresh control, change this to load data and update our load data to be an out-Objective-C function. Yes? We updated that, right? So, okay, let's run it and see if we have any errors we need to fix. So go to my profile. I have 2 items here. If I go to favorites, does this guy have any items? I think he did favorite something, right? Did he? We didn't do configure cell stuff yet. Configure cell. Oh, it's just commented out, right? From yesterday. Let's maneuver to configure cell, to cell for all, sorry. Cell for all, we come here, we have favorites. It does come here, our breakpoint does come here, but right now we're not setting up any favorite, okay? Okay, cool. So let's get a favorite. Let's get a favorite and let us go ahead and configure the cell. This is going to exist. So we'll have a configure cell for favorite. We'll have a configure favorite. I mean, for now, they do not have many differences, but we could have very easily have differences between favorite cell, or not favorite cell, favorite type and item type, okay? But for now, they're very similar. Cool, so cell, configure cell for, let's go to our item cell. Let's maneuver to our item cell to do some updates. Item cell. Let's go to item cell, and let's actually write a public function here, and it's going to be configure cell for favorite, favorite. So we have a favorite item. They're just taking different items. We could, yeah. All right, let us refactor this a little bit because they're very similar. Sorry about that. Let's copy this and write a private function. Update UI. Okay, so we'll call update UI. It needs an image URL. Which is a string. It needs an item name, which is a string. Okay, item name, it needs a seller name. Which is a string as well. we'll just say it needs a date. Oh, we just did date description here. Okay, it needs a date. We need to fix date, which is of type date. It needs a price, which is a double. Okay, cool. So we have our favorite. We don't have a favorite. That's fine, that's fine. We'll simply call update UI here and pass in our URL. URL is favorite.image URL. Item name is favorite.item name. Seller name is favorite.seller name. Oh, not seller name. Do we care about, just put an empty string for now. And date is favorited date. And price is favorite.price. Favorited date value. Price is a double. Price is a string here, so change that to a string. Wait, why is price a string? Price should be a double here. Everybody? Price should be a double, not a string. I think we made it a string in our model. We need to fix that. Okay. It's a string, right, in the model? Okay, they're very similar. There could be changes there, but for now, this is what we have. Seller name we don't have. Seller name is just the user's name. For that, we just won't show the seller name. We could hide it actually. We could do this. We could simply say seller label that is hidden. For now. Actually, no, we cannot do that. We need a seller name. For now, just put missing name. We'll fix that. More importantly, let's fix the price. Our model has a string. This should be a double. Can we go to our favorite model and come back? Can we go to the favorite model? Come back? Yes? Yeah. All right, I need feedback here. Please, please, please. So price, we made it, this is not good here. This should be a double. In our initializer, our price should be a double. Our price should also be a double here. And our price is good here, okay? Because remember, on Firebase, we sent it as a double, right? Okay, so now we did that, we fixed that. Let's now go back to our item cell. And this is good, this works here. And let's go ahead and update, what do we still have? All right, and let's go ahead and update our configure cell for items. So update UI. Again, for now, we don't see the differences, but we could easily have differences between those two configure cells here. Item.image URL, item.item name, item.seller name, item.item date, listed date, and lastly, item.price. Any questions? Any questions? Again, we have two objects that's very similar. We decided to break them apart because there could be subtle differences later as we build out our application. Okay? But what we avoided doing was having those two blocks of code repeated twice here. Okay? All right. Let's continue on. Let us continue on back to our profile view controller. Our profile view controller, make sure you have cell configure cell for favorite. So here we have two initializers. We have a cell that takes a favorite and one that takes an item, right? So ours, we just simply pass in a favorite. We build. What's about item? Okay, this is good to go. That just returns the count of favorites in our number of rows. So number of rows is good to go. It checks to see if items was the one selected. If it is, it just returns my items that count. Otherwise, it returns favorites that count. In our cell for row, we check to see if it's items. If it's items, we configure the cell for item. If not, we configure it for favorite. Okay, let's run it now and see what we have. So going over to profile, I have my items here. If I click on favorite, still have an error here. Favorite, do we have, this guy has favorites, right? Let's see, no. So he doesn't have favorites, that makes sense. Okay, so let me favorite a bike. I favorite the bike, I go to profile view, I pull down, great. So that works. I go to items and I have items. Right? If we don't have favorites, we have no favorites. It would be nice to have an empty state here, right? Like, hey, no favorites, go ahead and XYZ. But now we have both showing up. We have our favorites and we have our items showing up. Does everybody have both of their views showing up correctly? Eric, question?
Why didn't we have to add the target for that favorite?
We just did one target for both of them. Okay, so let's go through it, right? If we look at our refresh control, right? That's what you're asking about?
Yeah, but does one target mean like that? Does that add to the whole table view?
Well, it will run that entire function.
Oh, okay, I didn't do that.
Yeah, it runs that entire function, and that entire function runs both of them.
I didn't know that was the whole table.
Yeah. Very good. The other one is just a date. Is that item cell? You have an issue with item cell itself, or is it item cell, right? So we have the date. So this is date value, right? Date value, yes? All right, cool. Okay, so how are we doing? Can we go straight or are we taking a break here? Well, with that, like, are we going straight or are we taking a break? Okay, that's like, right? So let's take a 5-minute break here and then we will come back. And we'll take a 5-minute break, we'll come back, and what we're gonna work on next is to conclude our application, well, MVP, it's never done. When we come back, what we're gonna work on is in our item feed cell, we'll have a tap gesture on the label. So when we click on it, we segue to a new view controller to show a specific user's items, okay? And we'll conclude there. If we have time, we'll refactor some of our code as well. Yes? Awesome. So we'll take a break here.